Yeah, they do.
Hello and welcome to First Impressions. So this is our 6th episode, and this is a show where my co-host Dash Hooper and I look at a brand new album that we've never heard before. So we have a few rules. First, it must be an album we've never heard. Second, we're only allowed to play it once. And after that, we rate it using a variety of categories. Before we started, we both picked 10 albums from any time and any genre. And the 5th album we're going to be looking at today is a long one, a big one, Songs in the Key of Life, the 1976 album by Stevie Wonder. So how are you doing today, Dash?
I am doing excellent. How about yourself?
I am doing well. And I just realized something. This is 2 1976 albums in a row.
Yeah.
So just me and my aversion to the 70s, I'm like, you will learn to accept the 70s and perhaps even love them. So it's like, okay, because I think 2 70s albums in a row, and then the next album we're going with is also from the 70s. So we're getting a healthy dose of the 1970s, but different realms of the 70s, because of course, when we're looking at the Blue Oyster Cult, that's a much different 70s than you would see with, Stevie Wonder. So it's both 1976, but probably much different received albums when it comes down to it.
I just realized last week we were talking about that. You're like, man, I'm just not a fan of the 70s. And we seriously, we're like our next 2 or this one and the next one are 70s all as well. So
yeah, so
I feel bad.
I will learn to embrace the 70s, and it's kind of last week's album, this week's album. I realize, okay, it's not as bad as I like to put in my mind. There's some really great stuff, and Jethro Tull was a 70s one. So there's stuff, and I'm learning. And that's the beauty of this is, okay, you can think my preconceived notion is I don't like 70s, and you can listen and go, okay, you know what? I was wrong. There's some good stuff hiding in there. You just have to kind of dig through some of the stuff, like all the yacht rock. I can dig through that. I can never hear another yacht rock song. I will live a happy life. But there's other stuff besides just the yacht rock of the 70s. So I think that's kind of what my brain, when I think of 70s, that's where it goes to. It's just, that kind of yacht rock in that particular genre. So with this one, we're going with a big one, which is surprising that neither one of us have heard it before, because we're both music fans. And if you go through, all the music polls that they run in different times and different publications, it's always at least top 50 album of all time, if not top 10 album of all time. And here I am having never heard it. And you call yourself a music fan and you realize there's just infinite music that you haven't heard that may be considered the best. Same thing with movies. You're a movie fan, you'll never see all the great ones.
That is true.
It's not enough time in any days of our lives to watch all the great and hear all the great music. So we're trying to remedy that by hearing some good stuff now. And this one, we always start with a little bit of history of the artist. In this case, we wouldn't say history of the band, because Stevie Wonder's kind of his own island. I mean, even though there were a lot of musicians that played on this, you think of Stevie Wonder, it's not, Stevie Wonder it's just Stevie Wonder. You think of him, you think of the harmonica, you think of him playing the piano, and there's always a band backing behind him. I mean, he's still out there touring. I think he's playing a show in LA next weekend, in fact. So he's still doing his thing. So it's great. You don't never have to retire. So a little bit about Stevie Wonder. He was born Steveland Hardaway Judkins, and he was born in 1950 on May 13th in Saginaw, Michigan, and he's a huge influential musician. You listen to this album, you can hear the influence all throughout. I hear this song, I'm like, okay, that one has a little bit of Prince. This one, I mean, there's one song, Coolio is all you're going to think of when you hear it, because if you're from our era, you hear that song, you hear the backdrop, and it's definitely all you think of is Coolio. And you hear his influence, kind of like when you listen to a James Brown album and you can hear all the hip hop albums that have sampled it. You can also hear the hip hop that sampled Stevie Wonder. So he was born prematurely and lost his sight shortly after birth. And one of the things you definitely think about when you think of him is the fact that he is blind. But despite that, he had extraordinary musical talent, even at an early age. And he actually signed his first record contract at age 11. So he signed to Motown at age 11. They called him Little Stevie Wonder. So that's where Stevie Wonder came from. And his first album came out in 1962. And he was 13 years old and became the youngest artist to ever top the Billboard Hot 100 with a song. So a pretty amazing thing to think that here he is, the age of students that I teach, and he's out there, making #1 records. It's just crazy to think, I have a 14-year-old at home, and to think that, by the time he was her age, he's already, multi-platinum artist. So just crazy stuff. And then the 1970s, where he kind of found his groove, he signed with Motown. They gave him entire creative freedom on this, and he created 3 albums in a row that won the best album Grammy. So 3 times in a row he won best album Grammy. One time he took a break, and even in his acceptance speech, Paul Simon thanked Stevie Wonder for not releasing an album that year, because he would have as I'm sure he realizes. So yeah, he has infinite hits. You think you know all the hits, and this album you're listening to, you're like, damn, I know that one, I know that one, I know that one. And I'm sure any of his albums that you would happen to grab up, you're going to realize he has, big hits hiding on those ones, because, this album doesn't have Superstition, Higher Ground, and those are ones that I know really well on, from his catalog.
Yeah, right.
And then he's won through his career 25 Grammy Awards and a Lifetime Achievement Award. And he's also an outspoken advocate for social justice, humanitarian causes, disability rights. He does have a blind school in Los Angeles that my brother, who lost his sight, went to Stevie Wonder's blind school in Los Angeles. So he's out there advocating for disability rights and justice rights. And he was one of the biggest people who fought to make sure that Martin Luther King Jr. Day could become a national holiday.
Yes, he was.
And we were saying before, he's still performing next weekend in Los Angeles. So he's still out there doing his thing. I don't know how great his performances are. It's hard to say. I haven't watched recent clips of him, but yeah, I mean, the fact that he's still out there doing it at his age is pretty incredible.
Yeah. It's wild. That's wild stuff.
It's kind of like, all right, you know what? You never have to really stop. And that's kind of the beauty of it. It's like retirement doesn't have to exist. And it's great that he's out there doing his thing. So yes, we're back. John, you cannot get rid of us. And he'll be joining us on Saturday sneak preview, when we 3 creators, the same ones as from before, and Timothy's Fling's going to join us, and we're going to take on Christmas music. So we're going after Christmas music with John on a non-Saturday. We're here today on a Tuesday this time. I keep thinking it's Wednesday. This week's going to suck now. I'm going to constantly think we're one day ahead. Third, I'm like, yes, it's Friday. Like, it's not Friday. So yes, it is not Wednesday either. So our little live on Wednesdays, it's a lie. We're here on a Tuesday because I have to do a performance at my school tomorrow. And that's, as a teacher, there's a few things you don't miss, and that's one of them. So guess what? We won't be here Wednesday, but from this point on, mostly we'll be here Wednesdays. We might have to shuffle things up again here and there if things come up, because when things come up, they come up. But glad you're here today. And let's talk a little bit about the album itself. As I was saying earlier, generally considered one of the greatest of all time. And it was released in September of 1976. and it was his 18th album, which is insane to think that by this point he had already released 18 albums. But I guess if you start when you're 11 years old, you're just going to be dropping them like crazy. So probably 1-2 albums a year sometimes. So this one is considered his magnum opus. It is the one that you look at the rock history and it's the one that's in there. I mean, there's other albums I'm sure that he released that were huge, but this one had a lot of hype because he, as I was saying earlier, won album of the year 2 times in a row before this. So he's already just won 2 Grammys, took a year off, gave his pity Grammy to Paul Simon.
Yeah, right.
So and now he's putting out another album, but he was already thinking about quitting the music industry. And now you think, all right, he's young. Why would he quit? But after 18 albums, I mean, you would think, what more do you have to say? But he kept going through the 70s. I remember him from the 80s. I remember seeing him on MTV. So he just, dynamic and had no time, no stop, and just crazy to think.
Yeah.
So he had thought about quitting it and then changed his mind, signed a huge 7-album contract with Motown, and again was given creative freedom. They weren't going to step in. They weren't going to give him notes. They were going to let him do his thing. And I think that's probably one of the reasons he would sign that huge contract, probably hugely lucrative as well. But he was out there and now released this double album, but not just a double album. It's a double album and a 4-track 7-inch because he couldn't contain it all on just one double vinyl album. So back then, this is the vinyl era. In the CD era, it probably wouldn't have needed, it definitely wouldn't have needed the 7-inch and might have been able to fit it on. It might have been a double album still, but you have 80 minutes when you play with a CD, where I think what's a vinyl give you, like 45 at the most.
Minutes, yeah.
Yeah, so he definitely maximized his 45 minutes for each one, but as a CD, he might have been able to get it into one and then maybe release some of the other ones as B-sides or something like that. Yeah. So this album, has a multiple ranges of genre. So you have R&B, you have funk, you have jazz, soul, pop, bits of rock in there as well, and all on one gigantic album. And Dash and I were talking a little before the show. It's a lot to listen to. It's a lot to process. And
almost 2 hours. Almost 2 hour long.
Almost 2 hours. And I write, like I've said before, I write extensive notes about every single song. So I'm covering pages and pages of notes just to try to talk about every song, knowing that there's no way I'm going to talk about every single one. But yeah, it's a dense album. It's got a lot of stuff. It had Isn't She Lovely, which is, kind of a staple radio hit. Also kind of like Don't Fear the Reaper. It's been used in a lot of movies. You've definitely heard it before. Sir Duke, another huge hit. Pastime Paradise, which is what Coolio sampled for Gangster's Paradise. So you would, if you're my age, you probably know it from that more than the Stevie Wonder. And it was, it topped the Billboard Top 100 for 13 consecutive weeks. It debuted at number 1. It won Album of the Year and has now become what's considered a cultural touchstone of an album. So huge legacy. And this is kind of the album that made him larger than life. I mean, he was always big. He went to win 3 Grammys in a row is saying you're already huge, but this just catapulted him even further.
Yeah.
So when it was released, talking about the critical reviews now, it was released to hugely strong critical reviews, as you can imagine. I had a hard time. Anytime we're dealing with one of the albums from the 1970s, it's hard to find real-time reviews because, of course, the reviews are all revisionist now. If someone did bash it, they want that to be stricken from the records. You don't want to be that one publication that said this album is garbage, when it's now considered one of the greatest of all time. So digging it up, I found some of the original reviews. So Time Magazine praised it as a masterpiece in its time. And they talked about the merging of the genres, the fact that it had so much going on and its depth of lyrics. Rolling Stone called it one of his finest achievements. However, I did finally find their original review, and they did talk about the fact that it was a little bit bloated. So the only thing you'll kind of get as a criticism of this album is that maybe it's too bloated. It's perhaps a little bit too much. And I always think when I hear a double album, my first thought is always, is there enough that can be taken off to turn this into a single album? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes you listen, you go, okay, yeah, they could have easily chopped this, and this, and made one beautiful single album. For this one, I don't know if it could be chopped down to a single album, but definitely could have been chopped down to just the double album and leave off the 4-song EP. But that's just my opinion. And I'm sure some people are going to be like, nope, every song's a masterpiece. You don't know what you're talking about. And if you think that's true, let me know. That's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Tell me in the comments that I am wrong. And, I will accept it.
There is one song off the 7-inch that deserves to be on the
main album.
On the main album, in my opinion. There's we'll talk about it in a little bit, though.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it has 2 songs that I found stronger than a few of the songs on the main album, and could have been moved on, and I think would have been a more worthy spot, because especially if you're playing this, a lot of times you'll even forget the 7-inch is in there, I'm sure. Because I own a couple albums that have a bonus 7-inch, and I was like, okay, I didn't know this 7-inch was even on the album, and I dug it out, later on, and yeah, did people miss that? I think one of the songs on the 7-inch did actually get radio play, but yeah, it's worthy of being on the album by itself. So yeah, there's our bonus 7-inch with 4 songs, 2 on each side. None of them bad songs. None of them feel like they should have been shuffled off, but maybe it was just like, okay, you know what? They tracked the album a certain way, and then those ones unfortunately got sent off to the little 7-inch. So some of the other reviews, Billboard said it was amazing. They said it pushed boundaries musically and lyrically. Village Voice, they gave it the highest praise and said with 21 songs across 2 LPs and a bonus EP, it's, it could have been uneven and could have been overwrought, but yet still manages to be amazing. Even though they did also acknowledge that there were songs that were a bit fluff. So
there's some fluff.
I think any of the critics, especially if we were able to dig up those real-time reviews, I think a lot of those critics would agree that it is not just, a no-skip kind of album. I mean, it's vinyl, it's harder to skip, but it's not, there are moments that could be shortened and make it a tighter album overall. I think my thought is just double album, it still warrants that, but the EP, they could have easily trimmed off 4 songs from it and given those the proper spot on the album. And even the EP probably could have lost 1 song. So really there's 3 songs that deserve to get moved over, 2 especially. But yeah, it's big. It's a lot to go through. And both of us played it. I think I played it my first time, took my notes and played a few of the songs over again. So yeah, it debuted at number 1 and won the Grammy of the Year. So a lot of huge impact as soon as it first came out. So yeah, a lot of history on this album. I think this one has the biggest history of all the ones that we've talked about, just because none of the other albums that we've looked at are considered greatest of all time. They have big moments, but they're not looked at as, okay, this is one of the greatest albums in every critic's list. There might be great songs. I'm sure I've seen The Cure, I've seen Soccer Mommy have made lists for best album of the year for this year, but will they be looked at as one of the greatest of all time? You can't tell. This was 1976. It's had time to process and let people really live with it. So let's talk about our background for a little bit. For myself, I know the radio hits of Stevie Wonder. I think up until this particular point, I don't think I'd ever played a Stevie Wonder album in its entirety. I mean, there's certain songs you just know. You may not have ever owned them. You may not, have a family member who owns them, but they are just part of the culture. And some of the songs on this album would fit that. But as far as it goes, I really knew the Stevie Wonder that gets presented on the radio and not much beyond that.
Yeah. Pretty much the same. Like for me, it was same thing. You're sitting there, you finally get your first boom box, and you get your blank tapes, and you're just waiting for the Stevie Wonder songs to play. And that's for me, so I never had a full album of him, even I never had a full cassette or CD, because I just like certain songs by him, Part-Time Lover. I Just Called to Say I Love You. I learned to play that on the piano.
Okay.
I just called, so I have a little bit of back, but yeah, for the most part, at this time, about the time that I was really getting to I was more into the rock and country, because that my brother was a rock and roll and my sister was a country fan. Okay. So I was stuck in between them. But my background for the most part, like you, is just what I heard on the radio. That's what I knew of Stevie Wonder. And then, We Are the World, seeing him part of that. And then the other things that he did with Dionne Warwick, Elton John, and them. So that's what friends are for. That's all I know pretty much of Steve, other than obviously seeing him on TV. Like you said, he was always a Grammy mainstay for the award shows. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I would say, I know he was huge in the 70s, but that I didn't really experience or appreciate it in real time. I would have been too young to care. Not to say I probably did hear those songs still, but the 80s, he was still just as huge. He was always on, like I said, he was on doing the collaborations. He had his own huge hits. You saw him on MTV, and that's where MTV is kind of where I processed music as a kid, because I lived in the high desert, which we had no radio stations. We had like a rock station,
right? And
that was it. And they weren't going to play Stevie Wonder, but I would watch MTV and I would hear those songs that he would have on that. You'd see him all the time, and it would be, the Grammys. Then when the MTV Music Awards came around, you'd see him on those as well. So he was always out there. And still is. You still see him, like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he appeared at least at a Super Bowl halftime show. Yeah. So he's still out doing his thing, and it's incredible. So the fact, like I said, that he just sold out the crypto arena at this age, at this time in his career, is just saying, okay, that's how much the people love these songs. Because I would guess if you went to one of those shows, you'd see a pretty mixed age group of people. Oh, yeah. People who learned it, people who heard it in real time, people who gave it to, let their children hear it and got them to love it. And then, the children's children. So you have, even the younger generation of teenagers that learn to love it, maybe through hip hop or something like that. So yeah, he's been doing it and still doing it. So yeah, that's kind of my background. And like I said, my brother's blind school, I definitely know him from being a part of that. And okay, so yeah, the Madness Network will have this on tomorrow in its regular time slot. So if you're missing it today, you can tune in tomorrow, and it'll be on all the different destinations on the Madness Network. So let's take a look at
replay. Replay is just as good as live. So
yeah. And you can still tell us we're wrong. Yeah, drop those comments and tell us we are completely wrong, completely right. I know people told me I was wrong about Jethro Tull, and that's okay. I'm okay to be wrong. I have my own musical lanes, and when we get my next 3 picks, you're going to see some of my more eccentric choices, but it's okay. You can tell me that was garbage, you were wrong, or that was brilliant, you were right. And either way, we're not going to be hurt. We want to hear what you have to say. So what were your overall thoughts on this one?
Man, a lot to process. No,
yeah.
Again,
undoubtedly.
Again, like we do with every album, the first song has got to catch you. Mm-hmm. And the first song has to reel you in. And let me tell you something. This song reeled me in. Love's in Need of Love Today reels you in right from the start. This is what you called it, his magnus opus or earlier, and I agree. This whole entire album is a love song to him and like you called it his he's very into making sure that everybody's taken care of. I think he truly loves everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a song about Duke Ellington. There's a song about Diana Ross on this, and then so it's a love song, and he's all about making sure people are taken care of, helping the blind, helping those less fortunate, helping those in need, and that is what this album is. And at no point, sure, there's some songs that are probably like we call fluff is a great word that you used. There's some fluff, but I think even the fluff has a meaning to it, if you will, at some points. Could they have been on a different album? Sure, absolutely. But this this album was beautiful. There's, like you said, there's some great jazz. There's some great love songs. There's some great upbeat jazz, moving your feet. You want to dance while you're. This is, and you guys can laugh at me and pick on me all you want. There's certain albums that you do things to, like I've talked about. There's certain songs you write to. There's certain songs that you run to. This is where you can just sit there and clean house, do chores, and you're just, and it's going to keep you.
Yeah, it keeps moving, and when it does hit a lull, he finds his way back up. It's kind of like you're feeling like, all right, it's dragging a bit, and Pops is saying people walk through the halls at school singing these songs. So yeah, I could imagine that. Air guitar to all good music. Yeah, I mean you can't help it. Me, I'm an air drummer. That's my thing. I mean, I love good percussion. So I'm an air drummer, but air guitar. This one, like you said, you can't help but kind of tap your feet to some, and I could take songs from this and easily place them into my running list, and they would be fine. There's certain ones, I wouldn't put them in the running list, the ballads and things like that. Not to say they're not good songs, but the tempo doesn't move you. But some of these they have movement. If you're sitting still, I don't know what you're doing, because it's just there. You're tapping, so air everything. So it's air rock band. We can start a 3-piece now. You got the drummer, the bass, the guitar. We're ready. Just
if you're not moving to Sir Duke, if you don't get excited when Sir Duke comes on and start moving and feel good all over, there's something wrong with man. I love just So overall, it's a fantastic album. It deserves every accolade. Like I did looked up at some of the things. And there should be. To me, there should be no revisionist. There should be no revisionist history on this. When they first listened to it then, as opposed to now, I don't know if I don't see how anything's changed. They're all great songs. I think the brilliance is
still there. I think what would change would be now they don't even want to say there's a little bit of bloat. There's a little bit of filler, and it's okay to say it's not perfect. But you look at, I know Pitchfork just did a more recent review, because they do every Sunday, they review an album that they've never reviewed in their archive. And they started more as like looking at what's going on in indie rock and things like that. And they are going back and looking at these albums. And that one was one that they gave a perfect 10 to. And I'm like, okay, I can see that they give it a perfect 10, because even with the fluff, it's just so damn good.
Yeah.
And I wrote, for mine, I said it's considered an all-time masterpiece by almost every music publication in existence. So for me, I'm embarrassed that I'm playing it for the first time. But you're familiar. The moment you start it, you already recognize the radio hits, and you're like, damn, these things still just work. It may be from the 70s. And my thing about the 70s that I think gets me off, like we talked about yacht rock earlier a little bit, it just sounds so 70s. And I think the best music is timeless. And the best songs on this album, they could come out tomorrow and they would still be just as good. They don't date themselves. They don't live in a time capsule. They live in a timeless area where you could put it out tomorrow. If one of the major artists of today put out Sir Duke tomorrow, you're still going to say that is just a good song. Not, that song's so good, but it sounds like the 70s. No, there are pieces of this album that definitely sound like the 70s. But overall, it just feels timeless. It feels strong. And it's just a whole spectrum of his life. We have his faith, his childhood, his lovers gained, his lovers lost, the birth of his daughter, his social justice and the social commentary. Everything is in there. It's all of his thoughts, feelings, loves, hates are all packed into this album in such a way that it's just like, here you're going to spend the next, 45 minutes per side, and you're going to get a journey through the life of this person, but it's the life of all of us. We've all gone through these things. If you've held your child for the first time, you can't help but feel that song. And if you've, lost a love, you can't help but feel some of those songs. If you're deep in love, you feel the other ones. He goes through it all. And it's just certain songs. It's funny too, because I thought, I'm going to dismiss this one, but he has such great chorus writing and the bridges are so strong. You're just like, damn, you brought me in. It won me over. And that's kind of where this album was, where I'm just, every song I'm thinking, all right, maybe this one's not the one. And there's still a few that aren't the one. And we'll talk about those when we get to our next part. But overall, I mean, most of the songs were able to pull me in by the end. And like you were talking about, the opening is so strong. And we talked about that. Jethro Tull, in the album we reviewed, that was the greatest failure, was that it opened so poorly and so weak that you could have thrown that song somewhere else. And it's not to say that the album failed because of it, because there's some songs that grab you right back in, but this one, it doesn't let you off the hook. It starts so strong with its first two, and I would argue it ends just as strong. Like the beginning and ending for the album is just brilliantly sequenced. And it's hard to say things because, neither one of us are rock critics, but we just go by how it makes us feel. How do we feel this album? And definitely it sounds like we're both in the same way. Like you can't help but tap your toes. And everyone in my family was sitting in the living room as we're playing this one. And some of the times they're like, I'm gonna go in the other room. I don't want to hear, whatever it may be. But this one is like everybody's just kind of, that's kind of bobbing your head, tapping your toes, because you just can't help it. And he's just such an amazing artist that now I need to explore more of his albums. I need to go through and look. It's okay. He's got more good stuff. Now I need to kind of dig deeper into his catalog.
Start from the beginning and work my way back up now.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like the fact that this is album 18. It's like, it's a dense catalog. We got a lot of catching up to do, but I mean, I think it'll be worth it. And we'll find some we love, some we feel different about, but overall, it's worthy of exploration. So let's talk about our favorite tracks from this one. So what's your first one?
Starts off. I love the first track. I love Love is the Love is in Need of Love Today. Because again, you just talked about it. Somebody could release this song tomorrow and it would still have the same. It doesn't have it's not just stuck in a certain year. This is a song that could be played at any decade and any day of any time, and it would still have the same meaning that it had when he sang it. I love that. It catches you right from the start, and you're hooked into the song, and now you're like, all right, I'm ready for this one. So that's one of my very favorites.
I agree. I wrote that as my first pick for favorite songs too, and I love that he's addressing the audience. It's almost like it's a live performance, and I'm talking to you, I'm calling out to you, and that's how you're starting the album. Like he's almost speaking to whoever's dropping that needle on, and now you want to listen. You can't help but want to hear more, and it's just the perfect opener. I mean, he just nailed it, and both of us, that was our first pick for one. So I'll go with one of my other ones, and I'll pick, it's actually on the same side, and that's Village Ghetto Land. And the trickiness of that one is it's deception. You have these it's faux strings. It's done all with synthesizer, but it sounds like it's a string quartet playing. but it sounds like a string quartet playing at a pretentious ball in the Victorian era. And then he's got these lyrics that completely juxtapose it. They're dark. Yes. They're describing this disturbing reality in this poor neighborhood and the turmoil that they're going through. All the while, if you weren't listening to the lyrics, you would think it was a completely different song. So this is one of those ones, if you're just vibing with the sound of it, you're going to be completely thrown off when you actually listen to the lyrics, because it's got, you know, just this snootiness to the composition of the song and this darkness to the lyrics. And it just kind of grabbed me, because anytime I'm listening to the albums now, I'm sitting there with the lyric sheet in front of me, and it's just like, wow, these juxtapose each other so much that it's just like, it's just a punch. You don't see it coming on that one.
Yeah, that's a good song. Yeah.
So what's another one that you picked?
I liked As. That might be this. That might be. It's probably the second best, and it could be fighting for first at times. Just lyrically, it's a beautiful, beautiful song. I mean, and it's just, I'm trying to put it in words where it's hard to put in words, but let me.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna talk about it here in a minute, but let me pull up my notes here. It's just you're just talking about everything. It's everything. It's the world. It's all encompassing as far as a song goes. And this is like you said, that this first one is opening up and talking to everybody. As is the same. As is he's. Are you still listening to me? Type of song. Are you still here? Yeah. And if you're still here, this. I'm going to give it to you now. I'm going to.
If I've lost you, here we go. I'm back. Yeah. And that one is on my list as well. And the funny thing about it is, I don't think I've ever heard that one on the radio. All the other radio hits, I was reading that this was one of the big hits of the album, and I can honestly say I don't remember hearing it. That's not to say I haven't heard it over some time, but the other songs are kind of just, they're ingrained in your mind. You know them. You could probably sing along with them because you've heard them so often. Like Pops was saying, you hear them in the hallways at the school. You hear them, you know, playing from the beatboxes on the beach. You know, these are just the kind of timeless songs that they're just part of the world, and you know them. But this one, even though it was saying it was a radio hit, I didn't know it. And the same thing I thought was like, wow, that is just an incredible song. And I love that it feeds. I love the way that it feeds into the next song as well, where Into Another Star. When you have Another Star, it's kind of on its own. I don't know if I would have jumped on it as much, because it's kind of like a Latin disco almost. And that's definitely not my wheelhouse and not the genre I'm going to seek out. But As just feeds into it where you can't stop. You're feeling it, and you're feeling just the love he's putting into it, the love he's singing about. And it just is like a 1-2 punch of perfection to close out that album.
Yep.
So it opens perfect and it closes perfect.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Yeah. So one other one that I put on was Ordinary Pain. And I think what I loved about that was it kind of throws a twist into the normal, like, lamenting ballad. Because it starts off like that same lamenting ballad. He's lost his love. He can't think. He's so sad. But then it flips and it stops being kind of a slow ballad. The tempo picks up, and his lover gets to reply. And we realize that he's not, oh, poor guy, you know, give him a Kleenex. Like, no, you fucked up too. You did things that you shouldn't have done. She did as well. Both sides did things that weren't okay. But most of these ballads don't flip the script like that. And it just reminds me of when I was in college studying English lit, and we'd read these poems, and then years later, someone would write a response to the poem. And it reminded me of that, because you hear duets where it's like, okay, your side, my side, your side, my side. I think of like Stop Dragging My Heart Around with Tom Petty and who was that, Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks.
But they go back and forth. With this one, he finishes his ballad, and then it's kind of like, hold on, my side now. Yep. And everything picks up, the tempo changes, and she gets to lay out her end of the story, and then the song closes out. So I love that it's two sides, but not dueling. It's like, nope, here, say your piece. Now it's my turn. And she buries him in her arguments, and you're just like, all right, you know what? Yeah. Sorry, Stevie, she wins this one.
Yeah, the tempo picked up because she's angry. I mean, you're right. They both were wrong, but she was just, I think he was sad. His part of it was sad. Her part, she was angry, and I like that. And you got it reminds me of when you're listening to a musical or something, and you're over here in one part, and and it's very slow, and you know what's happening. Yeah. And then it picks up. You know something's bad. When that did that, I'm like, whoa, something.
Yeah, it catches you off guard. You're like, is that a different song? Wait, no, it's the same song. Because you're playing it on an album, and you're just like, wait, we're still on the same song. I see there's still a lot more lyrics to come. And it just, it's fun the way it does that. And I can't think of another song that I've heard that doesn't, it's not just, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. It's like, nope, here, you had your say, and you're so sad, but I'm like, I'm breathing fire. I'm pissed off. You messed up. I may have messed up, but in the end, don't just sit here playing the victim. So I loved how that one played around with a formula that's so well known. The Lost Ballad is just, it's been done a billion times, and it will be done a billion times more, because you always get those bands that release their breakup albums. And that could have been his breakup out, one of the songs on his breakup album, but throwing that twist in there and letting her have her say, just another amazing moment on an amazing album. All right, so now we can talk about the part that might make us less popular, and that's the skip this one. So again, tell us if we're wrong. Even if you're watching this tomorrow on Pops' network, you can drop a comment. We'll read them. If you tell us we're wrong, we will hear your argument, even though I know I'm right. It's okay. So what would be one of your skip songs?
I don't know if I necessarily have one that I would skip. Like I said, there was some fluff. Like, it's probably going to get me in trouble. I didn't even know where Coolio got it until we got this album. But Pastime Paradise, it's a good song, but it's just, I felt like it was just repetitive. And nothing against that, but it's I wouldn't skip it, but I'm not going to jump right to Pastime Paradise. And people are probably going to come after me for that, and you on your channel and be like, he's wrong. It just, I mean, Coolio. Yeah,
I can honestly say I kind of like what Coolio did with it. Yeah, it's got a little more life to it. Not to say Coolio's better. Don't attack me, but I mean, it could also be familiarity. But like you said, it's not as strong. But it was funny because I'm playing the album, and my wife's like, oh, wait, that wasn't his. So she didn't know that it had come from that either. Yeah, so we both had that same reaction, like, Coolio, rest in peace. It's like, all right, I hear where it came from, and both work. And then of course you think Coolio, then you think Weird Al, and you're just like, all right, this song's gone through a lot. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if it's a skipper, but it's definitely not one of the strongest. Maybe we can say, instead of skip, move to the 7-inch. So we're going to take some songs from the 7-inch. We're going to shoo those over, and we're going to take songs from here and move them to the 7-inch, because some of the 7-inches have stronger songs, because I know I really liked Saturn on the 7-inch. And
beautiful song.
What was the other one on the 7-inch? Oh, Ebony Eyes. Those two songs those are the first side of the 7-inch, and they are so strong. Like, Saturn's got its kind of spacey psychedelic, singing about how we're going to be better off without these terrible things that happen in the world. And then Ebony Eyes, it's kind of like almost a jaunty Beatlesque song. And I'm like, man, these are so good.
That's the one about Diana Ross,
the top album. Yeah. And it's just so amazing that they deserve it. So we can say, okay, we won't skip. We will shuffle to another place. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm saying it right. I've been searching pronunciations the whole time, but Nico Lela, I believe is how it's pronounced. Yes. That would be one of the skippers for me, or we'll change this category instead of skip, move to the 7-inch. So we're gonna move you to the 7-inch because I wasn't feeling the synthesizer rhythm. It just wasn't quite grabbing me as much as some of the other stuff. And again, it's not to say it's bad. Some of these still have great lyrics in there, but yeah, our new category for this album is move to the 7-inch, and we're gonna take the first 2 songs from the 7-inch and give them a spot on the album.
Yeah, it's obviously Spanish lyrics, and the synthesizers just, to me, you're right. This was my second one, and it just didn't fit. The music and the melody didn't fit with the lyrics to me. Not that it was a bad song, just some things weren't jiving on that part of the song for me. So, but yeah.
I'd say that's where you talk about like the critics at the time might have heard a song like that, and that's the one that they would have called more fluff, more filler, more bloating of the album. Because in real time, you do not want to be the critic who trashed this album, and I'm sure there's one out there. But like I said, it was a battle to find any of the original reviews in any form, and that's where I remember back in high school going to the library, and they had the entire archive of Rolling Stone's like first 25 years on microfiche, and you could dig out those original reviews and see when they tried to make that revisionist review. And this one, I found the original, and they still praised it, but they gave it 4 stars and said, okay, it's a little bit bloated, where now, of course, it's 5 stars, greatest album of all time. So I'm sure that's why it was so hard to find. Because they if you go on the Rolling Stone website, they conveniently removed the stars from it. They put the original review, but they took away how many stars they gave it, because they don't want to say, oh yeah, we only gave it 4 stars, not 5. We're giving it a B instead of the A+ that everyone gives it now. So kind of funny way to hide that, Rolling Stone, but some of us will dig and dig till we find the truth. So that one took me a while because I don't have access. I doubt my high school still has a microfiche reader, because that's definitely dating me, because kids would be like, what the heck's a microfiche? But in the time, it's like make your things tiny and then blow them up. But they try to hide that review from the general public. Yes, all right. And then my other kind of weird skip is I want to skip the last 3 minutes of the song Black Man. I love the beginning. I love the message. It's 8 minutes. And we talked about the 8-minute song from the Jethro Tull album, and it moves, and it's still, it keeps moving through. This one, I feel, kind of gets into a meandering point, and then it gets to the kind of the call and response of the teacher and the kids. And it's kind of one of my peeves. I don't like that kind of talky thing on albums. And anytime you get that, you kind of lose me. So I'm going to keep the first 5 minutes of the song, and I'm going to skip the last 3. So I'm not dumping the song. I think it's a great song. I love its message. He's saying, okay, this was created by a black man. This was created by a red man. This was created by a white man. Just showing all these amazing things in our world and how they were created by a variety of people. Yep. And everyone is responsible for the greatness in our world. The message is unbelievably great. The last 3 minutes, though, I'm done. I'm skipping a part of a song instead of a song in its entirety. Tighten that up. Give me a radio edit. I'm sure a radio edit exists. I'll take the radio edit where it's like, okay, we're going to trim it down to like a tight 4 minutes. Then you got a great song. So that song is the one song I'd say is worthy of a good radio edit. And you could make a brilliant song, but where it stands now, it just kind of goes on too long. It needs its stop point, and it goes too far beyond that for my preferences. But again, am I wrong? You can tell me, drop a comment, tell me that you are completely out of your mind, and I will politely disagree with you. So the other one that I had as a potential skip was the If It's Magic. Again, it's the melody of it, the harp and the harmonica. They just didn't pull me in. And I think that's what makes the last 2 songs on the album so brilliant, is that we get this kind of lull. We get the overly long, 3 minutes too long in the song Black Man. If It's Magic's kind of like it takes the tempo down, and he plays with the tempos the whole way through. It goes up, it goes down. It never locks you into one place too long. And that's one of the brilliant things about the album is it's not, okay, we're just gonna coast on one plane. Like, I love the Soccer Mommy album, but it kind of it lives on one direction. It's mostly the soft. It has a couple songs that break it, but for the album it works. But for this album, it's moving the tempos back and forth. And this one, I feel like we hit kind of a lull in the album, but then it goes to As, and then it goes into Another Star, and you're just like, damn, you got me back 100%. I'm here for this. And now you've closed it out, and I'll forget that If It's Magic exists. If I'm playing it on Spotify, that's definitely not going in my running playlist. But I wouldn't say that any of the songs we would say are skippers are necessarily bad. But now it's, we've reformatted it. Move to the 7-inch.
7-inch. Yep.
So we're moving these to the 7-inch, and we're bringing in those. I mean, 2 songs absolutely worthy of being full album cuts, those first 2 on that 7-inch. So yeah, let's talk about lyrics now. I think we both got plenty of those. So what's one that that really stood out to you?
Listen, we were talking about As, and when I was saying it was a love song, and there's, you get into the first part, the very first stanza, and it goes into it's got a couple things about the earth revolving around the sun and things like that, but it gets into just as hate loves the cure, or just as hate knows loves the cure, you can rest your mind assured that I'll be loving you always. That's what I told. As is a love song to everybody.
It's so good, so good.
And he said, it's what I said. If he lost you with It Is Magic, then he got you right back here. And
you're 100% back in as soon as that song gets going.
It's a gut punch. It's so good. It's a gut punch, and you're just like, oh, I love it. And then it goes into until the ocean covers every mountain high, always. Until the dolphin flies and parrots live at the sea, always. Until we dream of life and life becomes a dream. I'm done, dude.
It's so good. I mean, and I picked those same lyrics, and honestly, it is one of the best written choruses that there is. I mean, it's like I said, it's such a punch, and you can see, like, when you start listening to this, you're like, damn, I can see why. And it's just not the kind of album that would have been playing in the background of my house when I was younger, but man, it's something I'll make sure my kids get to hear it and enjoy it, and actually know who this is, because it's so good, and it's just such a strong 1-2 punch to close it out. And we could have picked multiple lyrics just from that song. So I picked one from the next song, Another Star, and it says, woe for you, there might be another star, but through my eyes the light of you is all I see. So again, it's just like that everyone's been in that kind of love before, and hopefully you stay in that kind of love if you fall into it. And you can always just think, like, the light of whoever he's singing to is just always going to be there for you. So just beautiful love lyrics. That's why he's been doing it for all these years, and we're just here talking about it.
I know you guys can't, and it probably won't focus, but the lyrics to As are.
Let me see. I got the big lyric sheet. So let me pop it up for us. Yeah. So here it is. It is. Yeah. Let's see. We're got all of these here. Just massive, filling up a book-sized lyric sheet on two full pages. And that's it's a beautifully packaged album. If you haven't bought it and you're on the fence, buy the vinyl. It is just beautifully put together. You get the 2 full albums, you get the 7-inch, you get this massive full-size lyric sheet, and just you can't beat it. It's one of the newer releases that I picked up that's done in the 180 gram vinyl, so it also sounds pristine. But yeah, you can't go wrong picking this one up, because you can just sit there and read through his amazing lyrics song by song, and even some of the songs that maybe the melody didn't grab you, like a couple of our throw them onto the 7-inch songs. You read the lyrics and you're like, okay, these lyrics are still hitting. It's just, yeah, that you throw in that kind of synthesizer-y song, and there you go into my 70s thing. It's like, oh, that's a bit too 70s, almost too 80s. And that's something, when the synthesizer took over, I kind of started checking out on a lot of the music that was going on. So, and that's the beauty of this album. It's not a synthesizer album. If it were, we wouldn't be talking about it as one of the top of all time. It's got a synthesizer song, but then it throws it this way. Then it's got a funk, it's got a soul, has kind of psychedelic rock, whatever you want. You're going to find some piece of it on here, and you're going to hear, wow, that sounds a little bit, I can hear the Prince from that one. I can hear where Michael Jackson picked up pieces of that one. So you can hear where these influences are all over the map. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so I also Love's in Need of Love Today. We talked a lot about how great that song is, where he says, the force of evil plans to make you its possession, and it will, if we let it, destroy everybody. So he's talking to the people, and he's saying, don't let hate rule you. Love needs love. And yeah, it's just, kind of bringing in the feelings of the first two songs. You definitely hear a lot about his faith and his belief, and it's there, and then it changes, and it's just then it moves into talking about in the village ghetto land, and just the terribleness of that. And you're just like, wow, he's gonna run the whole gamut in this album, and we're gonna get to hear about a little bit of everything from his life, from his experience. And I think that's what makes it such a timeless classic, is it's your life put into 2 hours.
Yeah.
All right. So I think again, we have a kind of easy one. Are we going to revisit this one, or are we sending it off to the used bin? So I guess, duh. I think I'll be keeping this one, and maybe skipping a track or two, but otherwise, yeah, it's some of these songs are going to get thrown into my running mix, and some will just get played, like you said, good studying mix, because the instrumentals, I think they're really strong, because they're just kind of upbeat. They have this good rhythm to them. And for me, when I'm writing, I always write to instrumental stuff. So anytime I discover some good instrumental music, it goes right in the mix. So some of these instrumentals are going to move right into that.
Yep, agreed. It's even though there's some songs that I think are fluff, and even though there's some songs that I would move to like we said, shuffle down to the 7-inch, it's still a 5 out of 5 for me. It's a fantastic album. It's definitely going into the must listen to all the time. Like, if you guys have been following any of our shows here, I have must listen to, will listen to, and probably someday I will listen to.
Yeah.
And this one is a revisit 100%.
Yeah.
Stevie killed it. It's every song, at least for some part, like you said, even the instrumentals mean something. You feel it. You hear some instrumentals and they're just like meant to be just background noise. These instrumentals,
we got to fill a few minutes, so throw this instrumental in there, and these don't hit that category.
But it was good. Even those, you're feeling it. You're feeling what he's feeling in the instrumentals. So 100% great.
Yeah.
And revisit anytime.
Yeah, I'll revisit this. I mean, I've already played the vinyl 3 or 4 times, so it's already getting replayed. So it's one of those ones that will make it into rotation. I think with a lot of these albums, nothing that we've listened to, I would like. There's a few like I think last week was the only. We've had a couple songs that I might not choose to listen to again, but there's always at least a song or two that we're just like, okay, I've never heard this, and I'm so glad I know it now. And this is a whole album of that. Just, okay, I'm glad I finally got to hear it, and now I've remedied being, a so-called music fan who hasn't played one of the greatest albums of all time. So we have checked the new box and heard what's an incredible album that we'll definitely be going back to more than once.
Yep.
All right. So now, next week, we're staying in the 70s, because this is my torture now. shall live only in the 70s. And we're playing an album. I have never heard a song. I have never heard. I mean, I may listen to it and be like, oh, I do know that song. But in my brain right now, I know the name, but I've never heard a song. And it's going to be Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot. And we're going to have our first special guest coming on to join us. And that's going to be Chuck Pinot. He is my editor. And he'll tear my book up. So I'm sure if he doesn't like this album, he'll tear it up too.
Right.
So yes, but he keeps me honest. I love working with him. So it's going to be fun to have him on. And I always get in trouble when I join his podcast. So hopefully I don't get in trouble this time. But if I do, hey, tune in, see what I do, and then yell at me for getting in trouble and tell me I've gone too far. Like last Saturday when we had a whole segment of bat nipples. Did I go too far? I don't know. You tell me. I think we went just far enough.
The fact that we're talking about Christmas movies and we got on a tangent of bat nipples is still probably one of the best moments of 2024 for me.
Agreed. Yeah. If you haven't watched it, you can go in, check out last week's live stream, our last Saturday morning comic talk. We go off the rails and it's beautiful. And you need to tune in. Go. And I'll be once Christmas break for me, I get 3 weeks off. Once it rolls around, I'm going to be spending a lot of time editing these videos, turning them into actual videos with chapter breaks. So you can skip right to the best parts. Yep. And I'm also going to be adding all of these to Spotify. Once we finish Gordon Lightfoot, I'm going to put the link to our Spotify playlist because that's going to be the first 6 albums that we chose. We have a special surprise that's going to be dropping on Christmas Day. It's been mentioned on this show, so it's an album that we've talked about, but we're going to be looking at it in its entirety, so stay tuned for that. We'll reveal it next week. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will be back next week talking about an artist I know nothing about, which is the best way, live with Chuck Pinot as well. So until then, have a great week, and we will see you same time. Well, actually, not same time. Wednesday, normal time next week.
See ya.